I would need my phone for that.
All right, so
You'll be good.
we're getting close to go time, so let's everybody turn your cameras off, turn your mics off, and we'll see you online here shortly. Well, thank you everyone for joining us tonight at our virtual town hall meeting. Again, we are excited to have the opportunity to share with you our Foundations for the Future facility plan tonight, which is going to be on the May 5th ballot next week. So as we get started, want to share a little bit, excuse me, about the structure of tonight's evening. So you will see shortly, I'm joined by a variety of other team members and colleagues and community members that are going to help share a lot of the updates that are surrounding this plan. So we want to provide you factual information on the Foundation for the Future facilities plan, share with you how the plan was developed, some facility and planning data that went into this, as well as review the scope, the cost, the timeline, all of those specifics that go into it. As we go through this, again, this will be recorded and live on SES TV if you want to reference it later. But we also have a website that has this information and more. It's located right on our main page, sesmustangs.org. And you can see that bond website, which can detail a lot of the specifics and the presentation materials that are here today. The other thing that I want to share is as we are presenting, you may have noticed in the communication that went out that we are also accepting questions throughout the evening. So if you haven't submitted questions yet and some come up as we're going through the presentation, you could go to that email communication that was sent out, click on that link. Mr. Faust, our communications coordinator, is with us tonight, and he will be moderating that. And at the end of the session, we will answer as many questions as time allows. Also, if a question comes up that's timely during when we're presenting, we'll pause there and answer that question. If you can't seem to find that link, we've got a tiny URL for you. So if you want to write this down or note it in your web browser, it's tinyurl.com/F4F virtual town hall. So once again, that's tinyurl.com/F4F virtual town hall. And that will access the Google form where you could submit your questions so that you can make sure you're well informed of all aspects of this project so you can make an informed decision as you vote. So as we get into the presentation, we always want to start with what were some core values of our team and our group and our district as we took a look at our facility needs. As you know, back in 2012, the community passed a bond issue to renovate our high school and build a new middle school and address some other needs across the district. And as we did that project, we knew moving forward that there were certain aspects of our master facilities plan that would need to be addressed in the future, most specifically our preschool and our elementary schools. And so as we took a look at those needs and started to get people back together in recent years and look at finishing that master facilities plan, we knew in the world of elementary, neighborhood schools were a core value of our community, that we wanted to have schools in different wards, different neighborhoods, so that we can preserve that community feel that was kind of a hallmark of what a Strongsville education means. And as we took a look at the importance of those neighborhood schools, we also recognize that one of the challenges that we're facing is the age of all of our elementary schools. We currently have 5 elementary schools, and we'll talk about them as we go throughout tonight. But 4 of those elementary schools were built in the late 50s, early 60s, during a time of growth in Strongsville. So during those last 60 plus years, the buildings have been well maintained. And we've kept up with preventative maintenance and critical repairs. But as we take a look at buildings that were built in that era and just the age of the infrastructure of the buildings, we are seeing some challenges in addition to space challenges that we'll get into more throughout this evening. Besides just the age of the buildings were built for a different era of education. One of our buildings still was a former open school concept where it really didn't have walls. It was built for different enrollment trends back in the 60s. And obviously, as we've seen in the news too frequently, and nearby communities and even in Strongsville, safety needs are growing concern that we need to ensure that we're building buildings to meet the safety considerations and needs in 2026 and beyond, rather than 1956 and 1966. And so as we go throughout the presentation tonight, we will share all of the details and the planning and the thoughtfulness that went into creating our foundation for the facility, or foundation for the future facilities plan. And so at this time, I'm going to ask my colleague, Steve Breckner, our operations manager, to come online to highlight why we're reviewing the facilities now and some of the challenges that we're facing and working through.
Sure. Thank you very much. So the first thing is that we obviously have buildings that are aging and getting older every year. And that comes with maintenance that needs to be done on those buildings. And some of that maintenance is, excuse me, becoming very costly in nature. We just went through and we had some roof assessments done, and we found with no surprises that the roofs are in need of desperate repair. We have windows that are in need of replacing. We have cracks that are forming on the walls, which the ground is shifting, that need to be repaired. So we're beyond some of the details, and we're getting more into the meat of these buildings aging to a point where there is going to be a significant amount of taxpayer money put into them. Also, as you look, not just the structure, but also the HVAC components in them, all of those issues we've been addressing as much as we can, and we've been ensuring that the buildings are as safe and as warm and dry as they can be. But we're just getting into that point where they're older and they're getting more and more expensive to maintain. Also, for everything that we do see above ground, we are having some challenges of some sewer lines, some water lines that are also just as old and are needing to be repaired. We have some water lines, especially at Chapman and Sarar, that have been given problems and have been need to dig up and find some solutions. Once those water mains have broken, we've had sewer lines. One at Whitney, we had a main sewer line that collapsed and needed to be repaired. So it's not just what's above ground that's aging, it's also what's beneath the ground that's aging. And as you know, if you've done any kind of home repair or any kind of building repair, as you start having to have things dug up, the challenges and the expense become even greater. As far as the safety and security, we have taken great strides to make the current buildings as safe and secure as possible. Even in some cases having to completely renovate some areas so that we can get away from the old plan, which was to have the office as the central part of the building. And of course, now the prevailing thought is to have the offices at the front. So we've had to accommodate. So even some of those classroom spaces had to be turned into office spaces, and that's greatly reduced some of the classroom size in the buildings in order to do that. And quite frankly, with some of the new technology coming in old buildings, there's only so much wiring you can do. There's only so much electricity that you can borrow to run that technology. And we are getting to the point where we are needing to actually change the electrical infrastructure in some of the schools and add in very expensive components if we are to continue upgrading and adopting some of this newer technology. Back to you, Dr. Ryder.
Thank you, Steve. As Steve shared, these ongoing, we provide these ongoing repairs, but it does not eliminate long-term limitations that we have. And one of the things that we share is that Steve, throughout his work, has done a lot of planning, a lot of long-range planning, and he has something that is called his 5-year critical needs plan. And that critical needs plan outlines $10.8 million of infrastructure needs that we have across the district. Again, these are not things to enhance what we're doing. They're things just to keep the buildings warm, dry, and safe. And significant expenses will be in store for the district should this bond not pass in the near future and in May. And so as we take a look at the other things on this slide that we have to consider about why we're looking at it now, one of the things that's important to us as a school district is that children should be able to go to the homeschool where they live. And right now, based on students that have moderate to intensive disabilities, they may not be able to go to their homeschool because that building is not ADA accessible. And so that's something as we take a look at in the Foundation for the Future Facilities Plan. Through this plan, no matter where you live, students will be able to go to their homeschool because every school will be able to be ADA compliant for students that may have some physical disabilities and be home to and service their needs so they can go to school with their neighbors, with their friends, with their classmates that they grow up with, rather than having to go to another school that's more suited to their needs currently. The other thing that we're seeing challenges in is our enrollment. So one of the great things about living in Strongsville and working in Strongsville is we are one of the few communities in Cuyahoga County that's actually growing. Now, we're not growing by leaps and bounds by hundreds of students a year, but we are growing by 30 to 40 students on a pretty consistent basis. And so we've taken a look and we've contracted with companies to do enrollment studies. When we do work like this, we have to remember that, hey, we're educators and we've got an expertise in a certain area. But when we take a look at the metrics behind looking at enrollment analysis and birth rates and all of that, we need to rely on some experts. So about 5 years ago, we contracted with a company to say, take a look at our enrollment and see what you see in the future. And they said, hey, you're going to grow and you're going to see increased enrollment. And it's something that you're going to need to plan for. And so a few months ago, we reached out to a different company just to get a different perspective and to get it, right now, where are we going? And so currently we have 2,300 K-5 students in our school district. And based on both enrollment studies, they have shared, and the one most recent has shared, that we as a school district are going to continue to have 2,300 or around in that area, K-5 students for 10 years into the future. So this issue of enrollment challenges and space limitations that we have, this is not something that's going to go away when this larger group of students passes through the elementary school. It is here to stay, and we need to plan for it. And so it's important for you to hear from our team members that are experiencing these space challenges each and every day. So I'm going to ask Emily Young, our principal at Sarrar Elementary School, as well as Mary Whitaker, a teacher at Sarrar Elementary School, to come online with me and share some of the real life day-to-day challenges that they are facing because of the space challenges we're currently having across our elementary buildings. So I'll turn it over to Emily to get us started.
Thank you. So I am the principal at Sarrar Elementary, and the challenges that we face at the building where I'm at are the same throughout all of the elementary schools in our district. Right now we have 14 mobile classrooms throughout the district. At Sarrar, we have 2 mobile units, or trailers as other people call them. And within each of those trailers, we have 2 classrooms. So altogether, we have 4 here at Sarrar, and space is definitely a challenge. Right now, our gym is also our cafeteria space. which makes challenges throughout the day when we need to transition from encore to lunch and then back to encore with a very limited amount of time to transition. We also are using our stage right now as our storage for our entire building. So we are not able to use that as a stage. And one of the areas in our building that is really utilized for lots of things is our media center. So right now we have a classroom and our counselor whose offices are off the side of our media center, along with our sensory room for students who need to utilize that throughout the day. And our staff workroom is also in the media center. With the media center, we also have band and orchestra who practice in there. At least one of those groups are in there every single day during the week because the music room is being utilized for music. And then if we have any grade level presentations, PTA meetings, holiday shops, all of those things take place in our media center because we just don't have a lot of space anywhere else. With our hallways as well, we also do a lot of testing. There's some support services such as occupational therapy, physical therapy that take place in our hallways or near our doors, our exits. We have a little alcove that we use a lot of times when we are also testing students. So it can be very challenging finding space throughout the day. And part of that is here at Sarrar, with our mobile units, we have all of our 5th grade classes being educated outside in those units. So all 3 5th grade classes are outside for math, reading, language arts, and science and social studies. And then along with that, we also have our gifted math instruction that takes place out there, which is with Mrs. Whitaker. So she's going to speak a little bit on that, but she works with our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students who do go and see her for gifted math. So Mrs. Whitaker, if you could share just a little bit about what your day is like when you're out there.
So thank you. It's definitely challenging, just not even from the planning point of making sure you have everything ahead of time. It takes a lot more time to go in and out of the building, but more so for the instructional time that we lose, I think, with those transitions, not just in changing classes, but students are using the restroom, or if they need to go to the media center, or something's not working with their Chromebook and they need to go in and get a technology swap, or they need to see the nurse. All of those things take a lot more time. And so they're missing some instruction. And with that, then comes the safety piece. And, we do the best we can. The system that we have where we radio in that the student is coming into the building and which door they're going in. And so then someone in the office is watching them walk in. So the safety piece, I feel, is there. I'm comfortable with that, but it's a lot of time, again, out of my instruction where I would have to stop and go find my radio and radio that student in. And then when they come back, then we have to stop and go check to make sure who's knocking on the door to allow, that student in. So we are losing, I feel, a decent amount of time. Noise is also another challenge for us. There's not a lot of insulation in those units. And so even with sound panels that the district has added, the noise still carries. And so, we have to kind of be cognizant of that, and sometimes limits what we can do. Space is an issue out there too. And because there aren't lockers or coat hooks, place for the book bags, and these kids are traveling, between units. Also, they bring their book bags with them. And so we're limited on space. And then on top of that, now we've got book bags and winter coats and things laying on the floor. And it's it's a challenge to have the classroom set up how I would like to have it set up, with the space for group work and be able to do partner work, because there just isn't enough space to put everybody. So.
Well, thank you, Mary and Emily, for sharing what it's like at Sarrar Elementary School. And obviously, teachers like Mary and principals like Emily across the district do a phenomenal job of making it work. But I think that's important. We got to say, we're making not an ideal situation the best it possibly can. Let's just think about the winter we've had recently, and think about as if I'm going to Mary's classroom, or I'm a 5th grader at Sarrar, I'm a 4th grader at Moraski, and I got to traverse in and out. Today was just an ugly spring gray day out there with rain coming in and out. And that's what we feel strongly, that a Strongsville education means that you not only have great educators and great support staff and great administrators in the building to move education forward to reach the goals that we all have for our kids, but they have great spaces to do that in. And so what we want to talk about now is, I'm going to ask Kristen Mayo, to come online with us. Kristen is a longtime member of our Facilities Development Committee. And so she's going to share the process that she's been involved with the district to start to get this plan formed. So Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. Originally, I started with this whole facilities process back in 2010. And I was part of the facilities task force in 2014. And that task force evolved into the Facilities Development Committee, which is a public meeting committee that's a board committee. And we are charged, our objectives are to review district properties, physical facilities, review the PI budget, the facilities plan and maintenance for the district. So approximately 3 years ago, the committee began focusing heavily on the state of the elementary schools. The committee reviewed the building needs, the enrollment, maintenance, and everything that goes into keeping the elementary schools where they need to be. And the committee decided that we needed to recommend to the board that pursuing replacement and renovation was necessary. So our group has evolved and grown and has added more community members. And the larger group was charged with reviewing all the possible options and picking apart the details to arrive at the best proposal for the elementary schools in Strongsville. The plan was ultimately arrived upon through thoroughly vetting and collaborating with this group of community members.
There you go. Thank you, Kristen, for sharing your experiences and your work. For years, you've been a part of this work. And one of the things I talked earlier about a critical needs plan, Kristen and the group, the Facilities Development Committee, when we talk about, hey, we need to do this HVAC project at Kinsner Elementary School last summer, it goes through that committee of community members to vet that and to provide recommendations. And so as this committee and group got together, we started to take a look at all those things that Kristen shared that we began to study. And so when we got together as a group, we studied multiple configurations. So right now, as I said, we have 5 elementary schools. We have one in kind of each ward of or corner of or area of the district. So in the northeast, we've got Sarrar Elementary School. I'm sorry, northwest, we have Sarrar Elementary School, where Emily and Mary are from. Northeast, we have Whitney Elementary School. Southeast, we have Chapman Elementary School, and southwest, we have Kinsner Elementary School. And in the middle, on Royalton Road by Maria Gardens, we have Moraski Elementary School. So we started to take a look at all of those and said, okay, if we have a vision for the future of our elementary schools, we want to look at everything from having one elementary school all the way on up to 5 total elementary schools. And so let me kind of share, what we want to do is share how we moved from that range of 1 to 5 and got to what was finally recommended. So if you remember earlier from my comments, I shared we have 2,300 elementary or K-5 students in the district. And you may hear, if you pay attention, to other people that are building buildings recently or currently, like Westlake or North Royalton or North Olmsted. A lot of people are looking at consolidating and going down to one very large elementary school. And so we took a look at that, but that would mean we would have one building with 2,300 K-5 students. I don't know about you, but that's an awful lot of kids in one spot in one building. And as we take a look at these other districts, one of the reasons that they could do it is that they simply have fewer kids than we do. And so for that reason, for taking a look at the number of kids and having a building that size, that would put us 500 kids bigger than our high school, about twice the size as our middle school. That would be one of the largest high schools in the region, if not the state, of 2,300 students. So the committee said, you know what? A, that's a lot of kids, but B, we simply don't have ideal properties to be home to large buildings like this unless we want to stack it 3 stories high. And we didn't think that was ideal for our youngest learners. So we eliminated that 1 total elementary building option and that 2 total building option. Then we kind of looked at that other option. Well, what if we just kept it at 5 elementary schools? What if we stayed with what we have now? And there's a group in the state called the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, and they oversee and they give guidance to school construction across the state. And they have said, hey, you know what, in 2026, if you would do that, that would be about 450 to 500 students per building. We really don't build buildings that small. Where 1 or 2 buildings is really large, 5 buildings is going to give you enrollment when evenly distributed. That's going to be smaller, and that's just not efficient and effective use of the taxpayer dollars. And so the committee eliminated the 5 school option. And we spent a lot of time studying 3 total elementary schools and 4 total elementary schools. And so I want to talk a little bit about the work that we did to look at 3 total elementary schools. So what that would mean is that we would build 2 brand new elementary schools that would be home to about 1,000 students each. And then we would renovate Kinsner Elementary School to, and it would be home to about 500 students. And so as we took a look at this work, because we wanted to build, we wanted to have some room to grow. So we're looking at building buildings to be home to about up to a maximum of 2,600 students. As we took a look at that, we engaged with architects. Again, partners that do this work and are expertise in this area is to do some pre-bond work. And we said, hey, you know all of the properties that we have that are available. Most of them are in neighborhoods. We've got one property, the old Albion Middle School property, that's got a little more space. Design these buildings in terms of just blocking it out. Can we fit them in the properties that we have? And the answer that they came back with is, yes, we could fit these larger buildings on your property, but we are going from left to right to front to back. We're using every square inch of available space. And even with that, we are going to have to build them 3 stories high. And so as we take a look at the majority of our elementary sites, all of them, majority of them, except for Moraski, are on side streets. They're in neighborhoods. They're nestled around homes. And so as we took a look at traffic and safety and neighborhood compatibility, we asked ourselves the question, what is the greatest consolidation that we could do responsibly to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars, as well as to be great neighbors? And that's where we landed on that 4 total elementary schools is the right fitted plan for not only 2026, but for generations of students and families to come. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our board president, Laura, or I'm sorry, I skipped ahead a slide. So I'm not going to turn it over to Laura yet, but I'm going to ask Steve to come back on, because as we decided, hey, we only want to have 4 elementary schools, we had to decide, well, which ones are going to stay, which ones are going to be renovated, which ones are going to go. And he's going to share and highlight the steps that we took to make those decisions.
So as you can see on this slide, the OFCC, or the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, we had them come in and they have an equation that they come up with and then they've used as they've built buildings or renovated buildings across the state of Ohio. So this group will come in and start looking at everything that is the structure of the building, part of the building envelope, the HVAC, fire systems, security systems, everything top to bottom, inside and out. And they come up and say, okay, what would this cost to renovate versus what would the cost be to build the building new? Once they arrive at those numbers, both what it costs to build new and then what it would cost to renovate the existing building to the standards of a new building, or the codes and the policies that are adopted by the cities that they reside in for new buildings and new structures. They then say, okay, if there's anything over 67%, then it moves from the realm of renovate to build new. And the thought behind that is, if you're renovating, you're still dealing with some of the old structure that in due time is going to also need to be addressed. So instead of investing money into a building that keeps aging, at over 67%, they say it's not worth that investment for the taxpayers of the school district, and it's time to look at building new. So as you see on the slide, we have many of the buildings, everything in red there: Chapman, Whitney, Sarrar, and then you do see two numbers there next to Muraski, because there is an older part of Muraski, which is the part that is closer to Royalton Road, and then there's the back half that has the atrium, newer classrooms, the new gym. That section, the newer section, is still able to be renovated, but the older section, because it's over the 67% threshold, is recommended to build new. The only elementary on that list in its entirety that is not recommended to build new, of course, is Kinsner, because that was a late 1990s build, and it is not there yet. And of course, we've invested in the past few years in some of the infrastructure there, so that number would be even lower now from money that we were able to put towards that building to ensure that it's remaining safe, warm, and dry. But all of the other buildings are over that threshold that the OFCC would say renovate. Their recommendation is to build new for all of those elementaries: Chapman, Sarrar, Whitney, and the front half, the older half of Muraski.
So as we've learned from Kristen hey, we've got a group of community members, parents, staff getting together, studying different configurations. That group landed on a recommendation of 4 total elementary schools. Then we used our statewide partners to say which of those elementary schools should be renovated and replaced. The next part of that was to come to the Board of Education with a recommendation on the plan that should be moved forward with a bond issue, which has become our foundation for the future facilities plan. And now I'm going to turn it over to our board president, Laura Hausum, who's going to walk us through that recommendation that came to the board.
All right, thanks, Dr. Ryba. Before I walk through the next few slides, I just wanted to briefly share my perspective. I'm in my 6th year serving on the Strongsville Board of Education, and my family and I have been residents here in Strongsville for the past 26 years. We've raised our children here. They've attended Strongsville City Schools K through 12, so they're all proud Strongsville alumni. I've been able to experience our district not just as a board member, but as a parent over many years. And that perspective is something that I carry into every decision we make as a board. So before we get into the details, I just want to acknowledge the process to get here. It's been a multi-year effort, as Kristen described. And over that time, the board and committee evaluated a wide range of options, from, like Dr. Ryba mentioned, one large fully consolidated school to building 5 new elementary schools. So what we're looking and seeing tonight reflects all of that work. One of my colleagues, Eric Wall, described it as the Goldilocks approach, a plan that strikes the right balance between student needs, cost, and long-term sustainability. And so what we've landed on is the just right fit for what we feel is good for our district. So you've heard the why, so now I get to tell you the what. So this slide gives you the big picture of the plan. As a board, we're balancing new construction where it's needed most with renovation where it makes the most sense financially. The goal is consistency, making sure students across the district have access to similar modern learning environments. You'll see a mix of 3 new elementary schools, continued use of Kinsner, and the centralized preschool on 82. From a governance standpoint, this is about creating a sustainable system aligned to today's learning, not buildings from 50 to 60 years ago. So as we move into the next slide, this slide reflects an important part of our approach. We are not taking a one-size-fits-all path. Kinsner is an example where renovation is projected to be the most responsible use of our taxpayer dollars. Our focus is targeted improvements so students have comparable learning environments to the new construction that we're talking about. This is including our interiors, paint, flooring, to the more exciting outdoor learning spaces and new playgrounds for our young learners. As a board, we feel it's our responsibility for strong stewardship while meeting student needs, and this is reflected in this balance. And as we move forward, so this slide, this kind of highlights that this plan is about more than buildings. It's about the services for students and impact on our community. We are required to provide preschool services, especially for students with disabilities, and this plan allows us to do that more efficiently and consistently. A centralized preschool model improves access to specialized resources and supports for our families all under one roof. From a community standpoint, fewer sites can mean safer traffic patterns and more manageable arrival and dismissal, while still having that neighborhood feeling. We're preserving prior community investments like the Muraski addition. And at the end of the day, it's about serving students well while being mindful of community impact. I appreciate the opportunity to share this perspective with you guys tonight, and I'd like to turn it back over to Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Laura, for walking us through so clearly what plan was brought to the board and what is going to be on the ballot on May 5th. As we talk about this plan and the idea of, three new buildings, and one of those buildings would be built behind current Chapman Elementary School. A second building would be built behind our current Sarrar Elementary School. And the third building, which would be in the Whitney area, we would vacate the Whitney property and build the third building on the old Albion Middle School property and demolish and abate those other 3 buildings. This preserves that neighborhood feel that was a core value of the group when we started, as well as providing centralized preschool services in one spot instead of 2 for our youngest learners. So when we talk about these new buildings, it's always exciting to think about, what could they look like? And so I'm going to ask Dan Faust, our communications coordinator, to come online now. And as he shares and walks us through some of the visualizations that have been created, it's important to remember that these are just drafts. These are just possibilities. That true design work does not start until a bond issue passes. So Dan, I'm going to turn it over to you to start walking us through.
Thanks for that reminder, Dr. Ryba. And again, these are what our sites and our buildings and some of the slides you'll see in the next few minutes are what they could look like. And just as a double reminder, these are just initial renderings. There's going to be a year-long process if the bond issue passes that will include design and really get down to specifics about what each of these buildings will look like. So just keep that in mind as we're walking through these renderings tonight. The first is a overview of what the Albion site could look like. And as was mentioned before, this is just a fit plan. So when we went through these meetings and these designs, we had to make sure also that the properties that we owned would be able to fit the size of the buildings that we were talking about and envisioning, and what eventually the Facilities Development Committee recommended to the board, to make sure that again that that neighborhood feel was maintained, but also that we were being good neighbors and that we weren't building the buildings from one property line to the other property line, and ensuring that there was space necessary and needed, again, to provide that best fit for these designs and these buildings. You'll see in each of these building fit plans and site plans that there are some common denominators in them. One being that there are separate entries for our bus traffic, separate entry and exit for buses versus separate entry and exit for our normal or visitor traffic or parent and family traffic. So separating the car traffic and the bus traffic is a true advantage in these potential designs. Because arrival and dismissal can be very challenging at our elementary buildings. And again, as Dr. Riva mentioned before, we're doing the best we can with what we have currently. But these new sites would definitely enhance the safety of the arrival and dismissal and just the efficiency of the arrival and dismissal. There also is a loop around each of these buildings, and the loop is another true safety measure for safety design for these buildings. In most of our buildings currently, safety personnel, and if there's an emergency, those first responders have to go through one main entrance, and it's usually in the front of the building. These loops around each of these sites provide that access to any part of our property, any part of our building that is needed in the event of an emergency. And it just provides faster and more direct access for those safety personnel to get to the area that they need to get to in a more efficient manner. And then there's various classroom layouts, including, as you might not be able to see it in these site designs, but there's separate places or separate rooms for gym and cafeteria spaces, for art spaces, and then we've also designated some areas for both our youngest learners, K through 2, and then as our students graduate or as our students move through the elementary years, we've got some separate wings for 3rd through 5th grade as well. Again, we've worked with our staff to also figure out what is the right amount of rooms that we will have in these buildings, and those have been incorporated in these fit plans as well. How much space do we need for special education? How much space do we need for those initial entryways and things of that nature? So after each of these fit designs, you'll see we've also received from our partner GPD, who we've been working with from the very beginning of this process. They've provided some early concepts, again, just renderings of what our building could look like from the outside. Nothing final, but just to provide some sense of potential design and also let you know that we are thinking about these buildings as, again, individual buildings that are going to have their own personality, buildings that are going to fit into the neighborhood landscape. And so you'll see some of these outside renderings and notice that each of them have a little bit different feel to them based on, again, that want to give these buildings their own individual character. So this next fit plan rendering is of the Chapman site. And if you'll notice, there's a red dotted outline in the front of there where that blue marker, thank you, Dr. Riva, is going around. That's the current layout, or that's the current space for Chapman building as is. So as Dr. Riva mentioned, the construction of the new building and the new building will fall behind the current structure on the property at Chapman. Again, separate as you get into, there's one driveway at Chapman, but as you get to that back of the property, there will be a runoff for buses to go one way, and then and cars and other family traffic to go the other way. Again, separation of those two vehicle entities, and then also that loop around the entire building, and again that fit plan to make sure that we are utilizing the space as best we can without infringing on the bordering property and the neighbors. Again, this is a new design, or a design of the new Chapman site, the front of the building. And then here's the Sarrar site fit plan. Again, that red dotted line in the front of, or to the right of this drawing, is where the current Sarrar building sits. And then construction would be on the back half of the current property. Again, all of those details that are in those other fit plans that we've talked about, with the separation of the traffic patterns, as well as that loop around the building, and the actual details of what the building could look like is in that fit plan right there. Here's another just rendering of the exterior of what Sarrar might look like. Again, just a reminder that the goal is to provide some character and some individuality for each of these sites, but also to make them have some features that you can tell that they are associated with Strongsville City Schools. These next few slides are all about the interior of what a building might look like and what a building could look like. The first is our front entry area. And again, with safety and security as a top priority for our district, this is a lobby area where individuals would have to be granted access and buzzed into this initial area. But the important piece of this is that this initial front entry area is not necessarily part of the whole rest of the building. So you would then need to be buzzed in, or you would need to be granted access to the rest of the building once you just get into this main entryway. It's a lot more spacious than if you've been in some of our other elementary buildings. It's a lot more spacious and provides more room for that access for us to greet guests that are coming into the building, or parents that are dropping off lunches that have been forgotten at home, or textbooks, or anything that might need to be dropped off for our students during the day. Just easy access to get in and out just into that front entry area and do our business. The media center is another just rendering of what that could look like. You notice the openness of the area, a chance for students to work on group projects together, as well as a place for them to socialize. And then a rendering of the hallway that what could look like in one of our elementary buildings. Again, an open concept, places for students to also relax, again, socialize, possibly even do some group work outside of their classroom, but just a good overall concept of how students are learning and engaging in our current in our schools. A classroom concept that is on this slide. So these are not the same classrooms as when we went to school, and not even 10 to 15 years ago. Education is changing very rapidly, and these classrooms reflect those ability to change with how our education is changing. So you'll see some flexible seating in there in these renderings of the classroom. There's traditional desks, but the desks are maybe arranged a little bit differently to encourage group work, to encourage one-on-one special instruction. Lots of room for for our teachers to do the great work that they do with our students, and for our students to really have a comfortable place to learn and access education. And then our cafeteria, I mentioned initially some separate areas for for the cafeteria as well as the gymnasium. So that's a real challenge right now in some of our elementary schools, where they have to flip from phys ed to lunch in a short period of time, maybe a 5-minute window that they have, and then flip from lunch back to PE. These concepts and these new buildings would have separate areas for our cafeteria. So this would be strictly our cafeteria area. You will see the stage behind that black curtain on this rendering. So it gives us a chance to host concerts and talent shows and things like that for our students. But really nice open space. Again, lots of natural lighting. And just a good place for students to have some time to relax as they're eating lunch during the day.
Well, thanks, Dan, for sharing that information and giving a glimpse of what these new buildings not only could look like, but what they would provide for our students and our student experiences, and build a solid foundation for developing not only great students or great athletes or great artists, but great people based on a space that matches the outstanding work that's happening in our schools every day. So as we've gone through all of this plan that's been 3 years in the making, and that the board has approved to put on the May 5th ballot, the most important question, or a very important question, is, well, what is this going to cost? And so I'm going to ask our treasurer, George Anagnostou, to come online, and he will highlight not only what this will cost, but what is the difference between a bond issue versus an operating levy. George?
Thank you, Dr. Ryba. As you stated, this is we're to the point where what's this going to cost? Hang on, I want my camera flipped. I'm going to switch over. Sorry about that. We're at the point where what's this going to cost? As Dan was going through to showing what the plan could look like. I just want to back up for a minute just to give you some context about myself. As you say, I'm the treasurer for the district. I've been here in this position for 11 years, and also I've been in the community for 20 years as a resident, and also as a parent of 2 kids in the school district as well, one in the high school and one in the middle school. So the cost for this project, in total, it's going to be about $158,150,000. $10.5 million of that is going to be offset through an 070 capital projects fund that we had put money aside for critical needs of our current elementaries. So if this bond passes, that we will use those dollars to offset the cost. So the bond that we're asking for the community is $147,650,000. What that equates to, we're estimating a 5% interest rate for the bond. So a bond is similar to a mortgage. So this will be a mortgage that will give us the $147 million up front that we would purchase the construction for this and then repay it back to the bondholders over 36 years with an estimated 5% interest rate, which equates to about 3.43 mils, which that equates to $120 per $100,000 of home valuation. The average home here in Strongsville is about $350,000. So the average for homeowner is about $420 a year. Breaking that down per day, it's about $1.15 per day. And then bond proceeds for bond dollars are restricted what they can be used for. It's the scope of what's being asked. It can only be used for this construction project, for construction, renovation, site work, infrastructure. It cannot be used for operating dollars. We cannot take these funds and use them to offset our operations for such as salary, supplies, and operating expenses. So it has to go strictly to the work that's within the scope.
Thank you, George. And so one of the things we do know, and we're all experiencing right now, is every year, depending on world events or just natural inflation, prices go up. And so when we took a look at this project and started planning and kind of priced it out a few years ago, this project was about $23 million less expensive than it is now, simply because of the marching of time. So although we understand that anytime we ask the community to increase taxes for the betterment of our community and our district and our children, that's an ask, and there's financial constraints that are on everybody. But as we take a look at, for the average homeowner in Strongsville, for that cost to be about $1 a day, to provide facilities that will last not only for this generation, but generations to come. We hope that you see through our thoughtful planning and the work that we've done thus far that it's a strong investment in our community. And so as we take a look at moving forward in terms of the phasing of this project, as we've outlined, and George has outlined the cost of it, and Dan mentioned this. If the bond passes next Tuesday, we would spend the next year in design. So in design is not just in isolation. The board would hire an architect, and we would collaborate and work with our neighbors that are around our elementary properties. We would work with our city and our safety forces. We would work with internal and community members to take a look at, let's put pen to paper and really design these buildings how we need them to be, and take these concepts and anchor them in. But this is a large project, so it is going to happen over 3 phases. And the first phase will be the construction of those 3 brand new 700 student elementary schools that we talked about at the Albion property and behind Chapman and behind Sarrar. We have coordinated and collaborated with construction companies to say, hey, is it possible to build all 3 of these buildings at one time? And the answer is a resounding yes. So all 3 of those buildings would be built at the same time. School at Chapman and Sarrar and Whitney would go on as it normally would. And those buildings would be open and welcome new students in the fall of '29. And there would still be some site work to be done. And those projects would be fully completed in the fall of '30. Once those buildings open, we would start renovation of Kinsner. But as we've talked about, we've got no extra space at Kinsner. We can't say, hey, let's free up these few rooms and renovate it, and then we'll move students back. So in the summer of 2029, we would start the Kinsner renovation, and we would actually have all students and staff. Muraski at this time would be empty because kids would have gone to their new schools, the 3 new that we built. And our students at Kinsner would go and have school at Muraski Elementary School for 1 year. And then the Kinsner renovation project would be completed, and students would go back to Kinsner for the 2030-31 school year. That would finally, in phase 3, leave Muraski Elementary School empty. And that's where in the summer of 2030, we would be able to start the renovation, demolition, and some small construction of additional areas at the preschool. That work would take a year, and then that project would be completed by the fall of 2031, completing this entire project for our community and building upon the legacy of our community for generations to come. And so I'm going to ask our board member, Richard Micco, to come online to share some final thoughts. And as he's coming online, I just want to provide 2 reminders. Emily and Mary shared about the mobile units at Sarrar. If you're on Facebook and you follow us on Facebook, there was a video posted today. 2 of my colleagues shared actually what a day in the life of being in the mobile unit is like. And so you could see firsthand, see that video and see what the experience of having an education in a mobile unit is like. And so you've got that video representation. But if you want to come out and see it live and experience what our elementary buildings are like and what a day in the life of a student is, tomorrow at Chapman Elementary School between the hours of 5 to 7, Kaylee Harrell, our principal, and staff will welcome you. It's just a rolling opportunity to come in, to get a tour, to see what our buildings are like firsthand, to have all the information you possibly can to make an informed decision. So those are 2 opportunities that are there, either virtually or through video, as well as in person. So again, I'm going to ask Richard to come online and share some final thoughts as we wrap up our time on the presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. Rich?
Yeah, thank you, Cameron. Just to get started, I want to thank everyone for taking some time out of their day. It's springtime, it's warm. You had a lot of options, but you chose to get informed And so I want to thank you for taking this opportunity and spending about an hour with us. I also want to thank everybody who presented today. I hope you noticed we had a cross section. We had Cameron and George, our leaders. We had 2 board members. We had a teacher and a principal. And it's real important to me that we had community members talking about how we have been working this plan for a number of years. As a little bit of background, I've been on the board. I'm in my 15th year. So we've been talking and discussing this for a number of years. We built through the trust of the city, of the community, the new middle school back in 2016. So it's almost 10 years now. And even back then we were talking about our elementary schools, but the time wasn't right. The time is now. We call the plan our foundation for the future. And I really like the way that summarizes what this project is about, not just for the school district, but for the city as a whole and for all the residents. I like to think in threes a lot. And the 3 things I want to share with you to summarize the need for the new elementary schools come down to room. If you don't believe we're running out of room, we have mobile units, we have trailers at each of our elementary schools, except one, but we have 14 classrooms. And I wanted to thank Mary for highlighting it's a short-term solution. We need a long-term solution. Mary talked about some of her teaching challenges. They're doing the best they can as they can, but at the end of the day, it's not ideal. And that kind of leads into my second concern, and that's about safety. Whether that is safety in the mobile units, whether that's safety in a building that was designed for a world of 1960. I had a chance a little while ago for our PTA founders to go through the 1960 record book for Moraski Elementary, and it was interesting to me that in 1960 the community was deciding whether to build a new high school. And there was a lot of positive energy at that time, which seems quaint now, that they were talking about how Strongsville is on the map. They have a thriving motel industry. They have a proximity to an airport, etc. But the community at that time realized we had more students than we had room for, and we invested in building that new high school. You fast forward to today, and I hope you've seen that we've demonstrated a need for the elementary schools. I hope you've seen that it's balanced. Eric talked about it's the Goldilocks plan, and that's really important to me. It's a well-balanced plan. It resonates to our values. It is what we need to move us forward into the future. And that would be the third piece of this puzzle for me, whether you call it technology, whether you call it modern education, but positioning our elementary schools to make sure that we can educate not just the kids tomorrow, but for the next 30 years. And I like the balance in our plan. There's classrooms for traditional learning, but there's also a lot of collaborative space. There's also a lot of space for smaller teaching interaction, whether it's with a specialist or whether it's to take a few students and work with them directly. But ultimately, there's a lot of good balance there. And the last piece I'll share with the community is that cost amount. The board has thought for a long time on what is the right amount. We recognize that any ask is something that has to be considered by our residents and by our taxpayers. But at the end of the day, I think this is reasonable. I think we showed our values by taking $10.5 million that we put away in a fund to help offset the cost. And I want to suggest that the voter should not just look at the cost, but look at it as what are they going to get for their investment. And for approximately $1 a day, approximately $35 a month, we will get for our community and for our elementary students three brand new schools a remodeled, upgraded Kinsner Elementary, and a special needs preschool in the center of town that addresses so many of the real needs that we have and really need to be addressed. And I would suggest, if you look at the news, if you had the opportunity to lock in a value, you would. Just last weekend, I saw articles about how airfare is only going to increase and increase rapidly. So you should buy those tickets now. And I would suggest that might be something for the voters to think about for this bond. As Cameron mentioned, the costs are not going to go down anytime in any future. They're only going to increase. But the need is now. And so I respectfully ask all the taxpayers to take a look at our information, make an informed decision, and most of all, whether they do it before Tuesday or on Tuesday, please get out and vote. Cameron, is it time for Dan to help us with questions?
It is. It is. Thank you, Richard. So going to ask Dan to help facilitate. I know we've got some questions that have been asked. And again, it is tinyurl.com, F4F Virtual Town Hall, if you have some questions that you still want to submit. So Dan, what do we got?
Yeah, so our first question is that we've received several questions about security and how security has been included in our bond issue. We had some asked specifically about metal detectors and other AI-assisted security programs and tools. But the main question is, are increased security upgrades part of the bond issue and the ask?
So the answer is yes. So as we take a look at designing the building, safety is obviously a top priority, as we've shared, and that will be a part of the design and a part of the overall cost for the project. And so when we start to design these buildings, as I said earlier, as we did back when we designed the middle school, police and fire and the city, Charlie Goss from the city will have an opportunity to be a part of this process, to share their recommendations. This is their area of expertise as well as the designers. So there's nothing that's off the table. We will take a look at all opportunities we have to keep our buildings safe and secure. But to give a brief answer to that question, it is a part of the bond project. It will not be something later we'll come back to and say, hey, we need more funds to help enhance safety of these buildings. It will be a part of the overall price and be a part of the design process as we build the buildings. Mr. Breckner, anything else that you'd like to add, since this is your area of oversight and expertise?
Sure. I saw some of the comments and questions were not about necessarily the elementary, but also the middle school and high school. And what I would say with that is, we do have permanent improvement money that we always make the best decisions with the needs that are present. What I would say is, as we're addressing the safety concerns with the elementaries through this plan, that would also free up some permanent improvement money that could be used to strengthen the safety features and plans at some of the other buildings that may not be touched by this specific bond issue, but that money would be freed up with some of the funds that are not being used at the permanent improvement fund for the elementary schools because of this passage.
Thanks, Steve. What else has been asked for us, Dan?
Second question is, what's the reasoning behind changing Moraski to a preschool? And this question also talked about our administration building. What happens to the current administration building, and could the administration building that we currently have be turned back into a building for students?
So Dan, just let me know if I miss any of that. But first of all, there's been different, as we've gone through the planning process, we've explored a variety of options. So I just want to be clear that there is no part of this plan that addresses our administrative offices. Our administrative offices are going to remain in the same spot where they are. And so that's going to remain consistent. The reason that we are going to convert Moraski to a preschool, a centralized preschool, is for two reasons. First of all, preschool is highly regulated. There are many legal criteria that you need to meet. And we feel that to do that, having it in one space is the best use of efficient resources and supports. Secondly, if it maybe was shared quickly, but we currently have outgrown the preschool that we have. It's at the Lund Road Preschool. It's right next to the high school. It's in an old church. About 5 years ago, we outgrew that space, and we now have 3 classrooms at Chapman Elementary School. So having our preschool staff and students split between 2 locations is extremely challenging to manage. Thirdly, we cannot control how many students enroll in preschool. As Laura shared, by the state of Ohio law, any child that's identified with a disability starting at age 3 has a right to attend and receive services through their public school district. So our preschool, because of the outstanding services and supports we provide, has grown over the years, and we need that increased space in one location. Finally, as we went through this process, we talked about neighborhood schools are important, but most important in terms of the preschool was that centralized location. Think about a 3-year-old young person that has a disability that needs to be transported from the Whitney area way up in the Northeast, or Kinsner in the Southwest. If we are putting our preschool in one of our corners, that makes for 45 to 50 to 60 minutes on a bus to school and away from school, just because of the congestion and traffic and stops that we have to make. So when you put the preschool in the center, it eases up transportation needs. It takes 2 separate locations and combines them into one, so that we have an efficient use of services and supports. And when we talk about our youngest learners, we're talking about speech therapists and physical therapists and occupational therapists, and obviously aides and teachers and a principal, as well as ensuring that each ward or each quadrant of our city still preserves that neighborhood community elementary school. Now, the last part of that question was, hey, could our administrative offices, which is the old Zellers Elementary School, could that be reopened to alleviate some of our space issues? And you know what? 10, 11 years ago, when we moved into this building, that was the plan. What you could see behind me is an old kindergarten classroom that we had here. And so we did not remodel this building to divide it up into offices. We just kept it as is, and made it into spaces that were conducive for offices, because we had that idea. Let's keep this building just in case we see enrollment trends increase. Unfortunately, and it's again nothing due to the maintenance and upkeep or preventative work we've done, but when this building was built, part of the building was put in an area that has instability in the foundation. So we do have our northernmost wall that is starting to separate from the building. So it's safe for adults, but it's not conducive to bring back as an elementary building, because of the foundational issues that we have here and the concerns moving forward for this being a long-term facility that could support students. If, as a district, we can look at, the cost of repairing that, or if it becomes too much, we do have the opportunity to go and find office space in a community, which is not applicable to school. So that's why we're not going to reopen up this building as a potential site to address overcrowding at the other 5 elementary buildings.
You got them all. Good work. Next question is, was there any consideration in potentially phasing this construction? For example, maybe building a school once every 5 years in order to offset not only the aging of schools, but also easing the ask for residents.
Mr. Micko, Ms. Hausum, if you would like to answer that question.
Yeah, so we did talk about that, phasing construction and doing one building at a time. But as we saw, when we start talking about this 3 years ago, construction costs continue to climb. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we started 3 years ago, we were $20 million less than what we're at right now. And so phasing the construction really wouldn't save our taxpayers any money. And I feel like it could potentially cost us more if we waited. Rich, do you want to add?
Yeah, we considered everything and all of our different groups, as Cameron pointed out, considered everything from one school to 5 schools and everything in the middle. The one issue I think that we identified with trying to phase it is we have a problem everywhere. We are running out of space everywhere. Phasing in new schools works really well if your community is growing. So if it's growing, as the population grows, you add a new elementary school, and that's really how Strongsville grew. But we have an entire population, and candidly, I don't know how we would choose which one to build first and leave trailers at the other ones until they catch up. And as Laura, as you pointed out, I think overall cost, whether we invest in the 3 new elementary schools now or over time, as inflation and the cost continues to increase, I'd be really interested to see whether the total cost of ownership would actually be substantially lower. But regardless, I don't think we have the ability to wait to stage them. It's going to take 5 years to do all of this at once, and that's a long time in and of itself.
What's next, Dan?
Cameron, next question is, can you expand on the cost of the existing pipeline on the Sarar property? So there was a news report recently that quoted it to be about a $2.5 million expense. And maybe how does that expense, potential expense, impact the overall project cost?
So so on the Sarar property, as we saw the site plan, there's a natural gas conduit line that is on the northern end of the property, and then there's a jet fuel line that goes diagonal across the property. So we've been working for some time with Buckeye, who owns the pipeline. And so what we've factored into the bond project is the $2.5 million of expense, and that $2.5 million, it's not the exact cost. We don't know what the exact cost to move the pipeline is at this point, but we feel that that's a good estimate to have those funds allocated to move the pipeline, or if we need to phase the project a little differently, those could address increased construction costs based on possible phasing. Mr. Breckner oversees this for us. He just had a meeting and a walkthrough with the Buckeye Pipeline Company. And so, Steve, why don't you come back online and share what you've done and the next steps in terms of the feasibility study that needs to be done before we can actually say, here's the final cost to move this pipeline.
Sure. So we contacted, as Dr. Riva said, Buckeye Partners, and we first of all confirmed that there is actually material being moved through that pipeline. And then also we talked to them about what is the possible cost. Like Dr. Riva said last week, I went through, because we actually have a couple lines that are running through that property. On the north side of the property, you have a natural gas line that is owned by Columbia Gas, and TC Energy is the pipe company. They have easements that they don't want people digging around, especially because they are large transmission lines. They want people to stay a certain distance away. So I met with the Buckeye Partners group to see not only and make sure where that pipe is on the property currently, but following those easements for both pipelines, where that, if that would be possible. To summarize the meeting and give the ending of it, yes, it is possible. We will be doing a feasibility study, which they'll come out and they'll look at how far that needs to go into the property to have the proper easements away. And then they're going to take that pipeline and take it to the west of the property, up the west property line, and reconnect to that pipeline on the south corner or the southwest corner of the property line whenever it meets. They were very confident that they could do that. Where we're at right now is they're looking at starting to conduct that feasibility study so we can get a hard number for our budgeting purposes on what it would take to move that pipeline. And also we're working in conjunction with our architecture firm, the architecture firm that's giving us the renderings and the site fit plans to look and see what that would do to an overall building footprint, how it would need to be narrowed and condensed, and what could be put up to it. Keeping those easements in mind and keeping in mind that we can't run them, of course, under the building. We can't run them underneath all of our parking lots or anything like that. We would have to keep as far away as we needed to with those easement agreements.
Thanks, Steve. Dan, we want to keep this to about no more than an hour and a half, so we've got a few more minutes left. So any other questions that are left that we haven't answered yet?
Yep, we got one more question for you. So this individual has heard that our district is currently operating at a deficit in 2026 and anticipated to be expanding on that deficit in 2027. So how does this plan fit with the district potentially needing additional operating levies and dollars in the future?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask, George is our expert here, so I'm going to ask George to come online and talk about our current financial state, and then Rich and Laura can add context as well. But just as a reminder, and George may share it as well, that we did work to solidify our operating expenses before going out for the bond issue. The community failed 3 renewal levies that we had on the ballot, and George will share the financial impact of that. But as Laura and Rich said, prices of construction are going up significantly every year. And as Rich eloquently said, the time is now for this project, and we simply couldn't wait longer. But George, why don't you give us some overview of our financial standing, and then Rich and Laura can come on and talk about, board decisions and next steps in terms of operating expenses moving forward.
Thanks, Dr. Iwood. Yeah, that is accurate. We're in deficit spending. This year, we'll spend about $10 to $11 million more than our revenues. That is primarily due to we had a renewal levy that came off the books. That was about $9 million of revenue that is no longer coming in. And part of the feedback was, hey, you had too much cash, spend that cash down. So that cash is being spent down through this type of deficit spending. But I presented the 5-year forecast to the board in February and filed it with the state. We'll have another update in August. Those financials are on the website under the Treasury Department if someone wants to view those. In the next few years, we will be spending, again, this year we're spending about $10 to $11 million down. Next year, as our expenses increases and our revenues stay about the same, it'll be a little more than that, about 12 million. So we'll be through fiscal year 2028. We'll be positive. We will run into if we do nothing, we will run into a deficit in fiscal year 2029 that will need to be addressed. Although the renewal levy that I spoke of failed, was on the ballot 3 times and it failed. That was a second renewal. We actually had 2 at one point. Now we're down to 1 renewal levy. And this renewal levy was passed in the early 2000s. It's been renewed since. It generates about $8 million. That is coming up to the end of life, at the end of this tax year. So the earliest we can go on the ballot for that renewal levy is in this upcoming November of 2026. And we'll have 3 opportunities to put that on the ballot for the community to make a decision on it. And if it is not passed by November of 2027, that renewal will expire as well. So we also have that if with our operating revenues. So in November, the board will need to make a decision as to what they want to do operationally. For board perspective, I'll turn it over to Rich and Laura if they want to add anything to that.
I think I can just reiterate what Dr. Ryba said. You know, we were listening to our community after they failed the renewal levy 3 times. We felt the need to switch gears and focus on our buildings because those construction costs weren't getting any cheaper. And we wanted to, listen to our community members who wanted us to spend on our cash reserves. So that's when we decided to switch the order and try to build these new buildings now. Rich, do you want to add?
No, I think everybody summarized it well. You know, from a board perspective, we always need to balance the needs of the community and the taxpayer with the needs of teaching our students and getting them ready to graduate, go on to career, college, or the military, and ultimately become taxpayers in the future. But as George pointed out, we will have to make some decisions as possibly as early as the November election, but definitely, if not in the November election next year. But to be perfectly transparent, I think the board looked at this as we always have these budget issues. Just like in any household, you have to determine how much money are you going to spend on your mortgage for your home. And that's kind of how I look at the elementary schools. But you still have your day-to-day expenses, and we'll have that conversation and explain it to the community when the time comes.
Well, I would just like to thank everybody that joined us tonight to live stream an overview of our foundation for the future facilities plan. Hopefully you found this informative. We do still have a few days before Election Day on May 5th. So if you have any questions or further information requests, please feel free to reach out to George or me or Steve or any board member, and we'll be happy to answer your questions at any time. And once again, if you'd like to get out into the buildings to see firsthand what's happening in our elementary buildings, Chapman Elementary School tomorrow, 5 to 7 p.m. Just come during that time frame and walk around and see what a day in the life of a elementary student is in Strongsville City Schools. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your evening.